My name is Chris Barnes, and I am Digital Publishing Librarian at Adelphi. I was attempting to get closer to my dad since the passing of my mom and find something for us to do together. And we didn't know anything about his Dutch heritage. So having a very distinctive name allowed me to very quickly find out a lot about the family history. And it didn't take me long to realize two things. One, the family is credited with founding the first white settlement on Long Island in 1636, and they, by the 18th century, had become one of the largest slaveholding families in New York and New Jersey. So that was really a shock to Dad and me, but we continued to research together, and now the project has taken on a sort of life of its own in a different way. The moment it really changed was when I discovered that one of our ancestors enslaved 10 people in 1790 in Brooklyn. So that was shocking to me because, first of all, I didn't think of Brooklyn as a place where there would be large, agricultural farms. But Brooklyn and Queens were some of the most prolific producers of produce, if I can put it that way, up until the end of the 19th century. And so in 1790, my third or eighth great-grandfather owned 10 people, and that was just a major revelation to me, and I obviously wanted to learn a lot more as much as I could. And so I got out a lot of other history books, flipped to the back looking for our family name, which is very distinctive. It's Cowenhoven, and I found that there were Cowenhovens all over Long Island and New York as well as in New Jersey. And I started discovering the names of the individuals that they had enslaved, and that was really impactful. Once I realized that there were names to be found and more information to be discovered, I started looking around in the archives in New York, and I discovered that the New York City Municipal Archives had just digitized something called the Old Town Records Collection, and these are town records from the towns that were in Kings County before Brooklyn became Brooklyn. So today we think of them as neighborhoods like New Utrecht or Flatlands, but back in the day, in the 19th century, they were individual towns, and those records contain lots of names of individual enslaved people as well as enslaved people who were granted their freedom through a process called manumission. And those pages had been digitized, but they hadn't been indexed, so there was no way to search them. So the project really became me finding a way to help people locate those names by starting an indexing project. So what I do is I try to locate archives, publications, record groups that contain the names of people who were enslaved by my ancestors. And so one of the difficult parts of that is that my ancestral name, Cowenhoven, is spelled about 20 different ways, including Conover, believe it or not. That was the anglicized version of it. So a lot of it is searching for that name in different places, as well as looking for clues about the presence of possibly enslaved individuals. So you get to realize that very frequently you find their names in wills, in probate records, in tax documents and the like. Sometimes you don't find a name, sometimes you just find a number. But to date, I've actually been able to identify the names of over 200 individuals that were enslaved by my ancestors in New York and New Jersey. It's particularly significant that it's New York and New Jersey because we frequently think of these places as not being, slave states, but free states. But in actuality, New York and New Jersey had some of the largest populations of enslaved people north of the Mason-Dixon line, and New York City was a major center of slavery and the slave trade in the 18th century. So by recovering the names of these individuals, we're also recovering a sort of forgotten history of this area. So shortly after discovering the fact that the family were major slaveholders, I attended a conference on Dutch slavery in the Atlantic world, and that clued me into the fact that librarians like myself have been integral in creating databases that contain these records of the enslaved and allow them to be searchable and discoverable. And so that gave me the idea of creating this indexing project where I created basically a spreadsheet. And for each enslaved individual, I would include their name, the information provided by them, who enslaved them, and all of the data that is required by the database into which my information is going. And the name of that database is enslaved.org, And it is a database that is designed to be analyzable by artificial intelligence, meaning that when we add names to this database, we're able to find new connections all the time, and ideally help their descendants connect with their ancestors. The website, cowenhoven.org, is intended to really talk about all of the more than 200 individuals who I have discovered so far. And so what I want to do is basically have this site where people can go and learn about them, but also for each individual that I am sort of researching, I'm creating a profile on another website called WikiTree. And this is an open access genealogical website that allows anyone to upload information. And the idea is to have one universal genealogical tree. And so by adding information to that open source genealogical website from these slavery records, there's a good chance that we'll be able to connect people today with their ancestors who were enslaved prior to the Civil War. And I can actually already say that I have connected with a descendant of someone who was enslaved by my ancestors. By working through various genealogical websites, I noticed that she had posted a number of things that were relevant to my research, and I noticed that her last name was the same name. And so I reached out and connected with that individual, and now we are working together to learn more about our shared ancestry and history. Very early on in this project, I realized it would be crucial to get input from the African American community to make sure that I was treating these records and these individuals with the proper amount of respect and historical understanding, which is why I gave a presentation about my project at the African American Historical and Genealogical Society conference. And then the following year, I attended in person and met amazing individuals who were also working on discovering more about the enslaved. And they gave me lots of tips and really made me aware of just how important this work is to them and to really the country at this moment, because attending that conference showed me just how important it is for whether you're descended from the enslaver or the enslaved to come together, recognize that shared history, and work together to repair some of that damage. And I think a great way of making that kind of repair, taking a step in the right direction, is by helping individuals find their ancestors. So if I have a document in my closet that through scanning and digitizing and getting online is going to help someone reconnect with a distant relative, absolutely I would want to do that. And that's my dream, is to enable my research, enabling individuals to reconnect with their ancestors, and I'm happy that it's already trending in that direction.